Welcome, Sons of Asgard, to another episode of Geek Salad's Road to Infinity War. This is episode 4.
Yep.
4, yes, where we talk about Thor. I made it rhyme. I'm a poet, and I made words rhyme and didn't even realize I done such a thing.
So you mean you're a poet and you didn't even know it?
Shut it, Mike. I was trying to make a joke. So. This is kind of a relief for us because it's the first time in a few episodes we did not have to talk about Robert Downey Jr. like at all.
Yeah. Well, you just mentioned him.
Shit. Oh well, we'll have to continue then. So, this is honestly, in my opinion, the one that really started setting the table for the Avengers.
This is the one where they just decided to go, what the hell? We'll just do Thor.
Yeah.
And this is where they really kind of went nuts and it started clicking.
Right. All right. So first impressions on this is that this was going to be the first failure. Yeah. This is absolutely going to be, there's no way you can make Thor good.
Well, stars Chris Hemsworth as Thor, fairly unknown. Got Kenneth Branagh as director.
Right, which is probably the only real inspired thing that I remember before the movie. I'd actually seen the movie.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I'd seen Chris Hemsworth in is the 5 minutes in the beginning of Star Trek 2009.
True. And I remember Tom Hiddleston was like one of Branagh's lackeys.
Yeah, I'd never seen Tom Hiddleston before.
Yeah, I remember seeing him. He was blonde. And I'm like, oh, he's going to be... I was looking at IMDb, watching an episode of Kenneth Branagh's Wallander. And oh, okay, Tom Hiddleston, what has he done? Oh, he's going to be Loki.
Okay.
And it was like, okay.
Apparently he had tried for Thor, and they said, you know what? You wouldn't make Thor, but how would you like to be Loki?
And that paid off for both of them, actually, because... Let's talk about what worked. The casting in this movie is inspired, at least for those two.
You know, I'll even give you damn it, Odin.
Oh, Anthony Hopkins.
Yes.
Anthony Hopkins to me has been in a perpetual state of retirement.
Sorry, but my microphone just stopped working. So.
Oh, okay. I can hear you fine.
I can hear you, and you can still hear me, right?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Okay, so yeah, okay. We'll drop the headset for now.
All right, technical difficulties have been resolved, ladies and gentlemen. Must be the work of the gods.
Oh yes, Odin. By Odin's beard.
Which isn't that majestic in this movie.
No. He keeps it tight and in control.
Yeah. I mean, Anthony Hopkins has been in a perpetual state of retirement since Titus in 2000. So it's been, it's like every movie for him is now the paycheck movie. I've never seen him blow me away. Even in these movies, he doesn't really blow me away. He's very good casting. He's used enough. He's not used too much. He's not I brought in an Oscar winner, so we have to use him a lot.
Well, I mean, same thing with Rene Russo as Frigga.
Oh, yeah. Well, Rene Russo hadn't really done much in the 10 years leading up to that anyway. So
last thing I remember seeing her in was Lethal Weapon 4.
Right. Thomas Crown Affair. She's excellent in that, by the way. But she's one of those actresses that just kind of fell off the face of the planet. And I was like, oh, that's Rene Russo.
Yeah.
But in terms
the side characters are fine in this movie. None of them really stand out.
Well, I mean, all right, let's talk about what worked before we start talking about what doesn't work or is dancing on the knife's edge here. There were a lot of different directions you could have gone for Thor.
Yeah.
And I'm glad they went with Hemsworth because Hemsworth he's a hunk. Let's just face it. There's no other way to put it. He is a big hunk who is just genuinely funny.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, he doesn't really show it too much in this first movie, but you can definitely see the hints where he's actually got pretty good comedic timing there.
Right. Well, there's some facial things that he does early on in the movie when he gets hit with the taser.
Oh yeah.
And then when they back the car into him.
Lots of great sight gags in there.
Yeah, there's a lot of good physical humor, which he's really good at.
When they jab him with the sedative.
Oh yeah. there's a lot of really good stuff. He reinterprets the character beyond what the Marvel Comics version of that character is. So, let's be honest, the character of Thor is the most boring Avenger.
He has some.
Well, at least Golden Silver Age, yes, I think he is.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that they've gone through great lengths to make him more personable, turning him into a frog, giving him the beard and.
Yeah, for me, the Thor in the comics really didn't kind of like start really clicking until they brought in Beta Ray Bill and that had that conflict going on.
The Spider-Ham universe is missing a character. Yeah, I mean, he's just so good, and it's such a find, and I'm genuinely happy that he's happy doing these because it makes watching these movies a lot more exciting if you know the person involved is enjoying themselves.
Oh yeah, infinitely so.
Case in point to the opposite. We discussed, you and I were texting offline about Justice League last night. Ben Affleck looks like he wants no part of this.
Yeah. He had one or two scenes where it clicked, but other than that, he seems pretty bored with it. And we're
follow me, you damn insects.
There's going to be one character in this movie that we're going to talk about on the bad side that had that same feeling, but sticking with the good right now.
There are a couple. And then there's Tom Hiddleston, who, let's be honest, the movie succeeds and the series going forward succeeds because Loki is so good.
And not just the series of Thor movies, the entire MCU.
The MCU. You can't.
Up, you get genius.
Yeah, exactly. He has been, honestly, he is the biggest part of all of these. All the other actors, I'm not taking anything away from them. They've done some great stuff. But in the pantheon of the MCU villains they have right now, Loki is the top.
Yeah,
nobody is going to take him down. And there have been, I know that a lot of people say there's a villain problem with MCU. I disagree, but those are future episodes.
I agree, but with a caveat.
Okay. All right. But those are future episodes anyway. But what Tom Hiddleston does is he makes you really feel for him. There's this point where it's almost like he does not want to betray his brother. But he's like, there's ambition here and there's family here. And I'm going to follow the ambition, but I kind of feel bad about betraying my brother because he is my brother. Oh, until I find out that I'm adopted and, the family stuff is secondary now.
Well, yeah, but I mean, even with the family thing going on, he still has that familial connection with all of them. But he always realizes that the most important thing to Loki is Loki. He's the god of mischief for a reason.
That's a very good point. That is a very good way of putting it. Yes.
And actually, is. Yeah, one of my favorite scenes with him in this movie, it's just a small little scene, but after he appears to Thor and tells him that Odin's dead, he walks by and he tries picking up the hammer. He tries so hard to get that hammer, and then he just has to walk away from it. And it's like it's seeing the expression on his face as he tries it. Something about it really works for me.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Here's the thing. They love shooting him in close up.
Yeah.
And the thing that they do with him is that smirk. That is the smirk of the god of mischief.
Mm-hmm.
And it works really, really well. I mean, I think the script in and of itself works really well too, especially with a lot of the, they decided to go fish out of water with Thor.
Well, I mean, they also
no powers.
they also decided to go like full Shakespearean as far as the Asgard scenes go.
Yeah. Yeah. That's another thing that worked, by the way. I thought that Asgard was visually beautiful.
Yeah, big time.
I mean, I think, in comparison to the other two Thor movies, this is the best it looks.
Best that Asgard looks, yes.
Asgard looks, yeah. I mean,
absolutely.
Right. I mean, again, we can talk about Dark World that, in a few weeks. But
I'm just talking about like overall the movie looks. There's another Thor movie I prefer over this one, but
right, but that's the overall aesthetic and not Asgard.
Yeah.
And again, that's weeks away, so we have some time. Yeah, I think that really works well. I like but again, going back to the fish out of water stuff, I like Thor having to learn how to kind of be human and doing stuff where he still needs to be a warrior, even though he's powerless. And he walks into that pet shop and he goes, I need a horse, or perhaps a very large dog.
And I mean, speaking of being a warrior, the scene where he attacks the Shield compound.
Yeah.
Dude, that's my favorite scene in the entire movie because it also brings in another future Avenger.
Right. And that was handled.
Oh, yeah.
It was beautiful. Because by that point we had known that Jeremy Renner was going to be playing Hawkeye. And I like that it's subtle. It doesn't scream at you, by the way, future Avenger, future Avenger, future Avenger. It's just this dude, and hey, it happens to be Jeremy Renner from the Hurt Locker and the town.
Yeah, I mean, when Coulson calls him in, you just see this hand like go for the gun and stop and reach and grab the bow, and you're like, oh, okay, well, I see where you're going with this.
Even then, I kind of, it took me just a little bit of time because I wanted it to sink in.
Mm-hmm.
I could have been like, oh, well, there's Hawkeye right there, and he's all ready to go. I really loved how it just seeped in while I'm watching, like, oh shit, that's Hawkeye.
And it's not until like halfway through the scene that he actually, Coulson actually calls him Barton, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And I do like too the little witticisms that he had about you better make the call soon because I'm beginning to root for this guy. You want to make the call, and you want him to beat up some more guys.
It was the Hawkeye that we wanted to see because it's the same Hawkeye that you see in the comics. He's got that sarcasm going on, but he's always got that confidence that if he sees it, he can hit it with an arrow.
Right. And again, this is place setting for the Avengers. I mean, you've got your primary villain now. You've got another Avenger, Coulson. Coulson plays a much larger, substantial part in this than he does in Iron Man 2, where he's just essentially the babysitter.
Right.
Or in the first Iron Man, where he's just kind of the nebbishy type of, secret agent. This is really where they start cementing him as, as an order caller, as just the guy in charge of the situation at the time, answering only to Fury.
And it's really, I mean, beyond maybe a couple scenes in Iron Man 2, this was the one that really started giving him a lot of personality.
Yeah.
I mean, when they're facing the Destroyer, he's like, is this the one of Stark's? I don't know. The guy never tells me anything.
Yeah. And that was another thing that worked really well, too, because that's a deep cut. That is a Marvel Universe deep cut, the Destroyer.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, those in the know that the Destroyer was also one of the Heralds of Galactus for a very short time. And they nailed the look.
Yes.
Another positive about this movie, they nailed the look without making it look too ridiculous.
Hell, even Thor's armor look was...
Oh, his armor looked fantastic. I didn't mind so much there was no helmet because I thought that his standard Avengers helmet looks stupid.
Yeah. Yeah.
The comic book version, which essentially has got a little Kaiser Wilhelm point on it.
Yeah, they give it a shout out at the beginning of the movie, and then they just drop it because...
Right. Okay, let's talk about what didn't work.
Natalie Portman.
Yeah, that's one thing. I felt the supporting cast of Earthlings didn't work so well. And I am, Natalie Portman, honestly, this was pre-Black Swan Oscar win. When she filmed it, you knew she didn't want to be there.
I will say Kat Denning did not annoy me nearly as much in this movie as, well, I actually didn't mind her in the second one, but I thought she was much better used in this one.
Oh, she pissed me off in Dark World. But in this one, it was just like, it didn't age well. It doesn't bear further viewings of Kat Denning being Kat Dennings. And especially now, I think there's that permanent Two Broke Girls stain on her. That is all she is capable of doing.
I wouldn't disagree with that.
Yeah. Even Stellan Skarsgård to a certain point, he's more enjoyable in Dark World.
Yeah, I agree with that.
He's just
half insane in Dark World.
What's that?
Half insane in Dark World.
Right, which made him fun. He's also part of, in my opinion, and you may differ with this, the worst stinger in the MCU.
It did introduce us to the Tesseract, but they could have. Yeah, it's not my favorite.
Yeah, it's just there.
I don't think it's the worst. I think there's one other somewhere that I do like worst. I just can't at the time at the moment.
Okay. I don't know. I have to think about that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm going with the worst. It's just like it doesn't add much because they don't mention anything. I mean, realistically speaking, the only thing that may be considered worse still had us all hyped up was in Captain America, the First Avenger, where it was just a trailer for the Avengers.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was just a trailer.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, he's just kind of, he's there for the science mumbo jumbo and to be the only guy of Norwegian descent who can, make sense of, well, here's Asgard, and here's the map, and here's Midgard, and here's the Nine Realms, and
I still don't get exactly why he was so really against Thor. I mean, he was pretty much, until they became drinking buddies, he wanted him completely out of their lives. I'm like, you hit him with your car. Why do you hate this guy?
Right, exactly. Damn it! He just he's a magnet for my car.
Oh yeah. One more thing I will say I really really liked about this movie, the score.
Oh, the score is beautiful. Patrick Doyle did a great job.
The scene where Thor regains his powers and fights the destroyer. I can listen to that piece of music over and over. It is amazingly awesome.
It's a gorgeous piece of music. The end credit sequence is also a gorgeous piece of music.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because that's something we really haven't talked. I mean, we talked about a little bit for Iron Man 1, but this is for one of the first scores since Iron Man to really just be like, oh, it's a good, solid score.
For me, this is the first one that really stands out. This one stands out. The one we're going to talk about next week, I think, stands out very well.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the one after that is amazing.
Well, the Avengers stands on its own, and we will talk about that in its due time. Another thing that didn't work. All right, the Frost Giants looked cool, but how am I supposed to be threatened by someone named Laufey?
Well, that's not really the fault of the filmmakers, to be honest. But
yeah, no, it was just like one of those. He was just kind of killed unceremoniously and just kind of.
I mean, that's another part that didn't really work for me. The climax of this movie. I really didn't get any huge stakes. Oh, Loki's going to destroy Jotunheim. Am I supposed to care?
Right.
He's destroying the Frost Giants. So?
Part of why this comes in more so when we talk about the Dark World. Part of the reason why people don't highly regard the Thor movies as well as the other stuff, there are no real world stakes.
Yeah.
Sure, you get the big sentient suit of armor that's tearing up a small New Mexico town. That's about it. There's no real
small New Mexico town that's about a block in size, that way to that way.
Seriously. I mean, you can run around the perimeter of the town because there's nothing near it. It's in the desert.
It does have a very nice diner, though. It has good coffee.
Very nice diner. One of the best scenes in the movie.
Another.
All right. So how do you think this holds up in the grand scheme of the Marvel Cinematic Universe leading up to Infinity War?
It was an effective way to introduce a character that really it was going to be a slog any way you cut it to introduce Thor. And I thought it did a good job of that. It's still, for me, it's not. It's in the bottom half of my top list. It's a good way to introduce Thor, but beyond that, it didn't really move me.
Right. To me, in the grand scheme of things, doesn't do much more than push. This is the first big element to push phase 1.
Yeah.
After phase 1, you're on your own because they advance Loki's character going forward. Thor gets more growth going forward. This movie was. I'm sorry?
I will say that there are scenes I prefer of Loki in the second movie over this one. I think they did a lot more with his character in that one, but we'll get to that later.
Exactly. In just a few weeks, actually, because there were just a few movies in between them.
Yep.
This is if we were just talking phase 1, I would say this is super high up on that list because of you can't do the Avengers without this movie. You can't introduce Loki later on. You can't introduce the whole magic and Asgard thing. You can't essentially DCEU the Thor universe in your big team up movie. You needed this. And interestingly enough, when just talking about the DCEU, you know what the fourth movie in the DCEU is?
Wonder Woman?
Yes. A movie that I had said from day one needed to be like Thor. You need a standalone to introduce this character. Now, obviously, they fucked up whatever they did with her beforehand because she is a non-entity in Batman versus Superman. But what they do with her to introduce the mythology and the legend and the island and all that stuff is very, very reminiscent of how they handled Thor.
Well, they handled her a hell of a lot better than they handled Thor, the first movie of Thor. But I kind of give Marvel a little bit of a pass with that. I still think Wonder Woman's a hell of a lot better movie.
Yeah,
I give them a little bit more of a pass though because they were still. I mean, nobody had done like if Wonder Woman had come first, I think the first Thor movie would have been a hell of a lot better because they would have known kind of how to balance the tone with what they were trying to do with the movie.
Right. So, well, interestingly enough, Patty Jenkins was going to direct the second Thor movie. Yeah.
I prefer her with Wonder Woman, to be honest.
Right. I mean, this is a fun movie. It's okay for the kids to watch. You know, it's actually one of the rare MCU movies where there's very, very little, if any, language.
Yeah.
You know, it's a decent, light PG-13 action adventure with some comedy sprinkled in. It's definitely worth a view if you've never seen these before. But in the grand scheme of things, it just like you, it lingers in that lower quarter of Marvel movies.
I still wince every single time. I mean, I love the scene, but every single time Natalie Portman goes, "Oh my God," I'm like, "Oh, you should have cut that line."
Yeah, exactly.
Terribly delivered line from it.
An unbelievably talented actor. That's a sick thing, So anyway, next week when we resume this, we'll be talking about Captain America: The First Avenger.
This one is much higher on my list.
Yes, much higher on my list as well. Very different approach to the whole thing. So that'll be next week. So if you're just finding us on YouTube, don't forget to like, comment, and please subscribe to Geek Salad Podcast. We got a lot of stuff going on, including our upcoming musical episode, which we've already recorded. Now we just have to set it up. There's a lot of setup.
Which is a lot harder than it actually sounds, believe me.
Yeah. Also, you can check out me, Mike, and our friends Joe and Catherine at Geek Salad Podcast, which is available at geeksalad.podbean.com, or you can just download the Podbean app, or check us out either on iTunes or on Stitcher. And we're also available on Twitter at Geek Salad Radio, and you can check out our Facebook page at that Geek Salad Podcast. So anyway, until next time, I'm Andy.
I'm Mike.
Go forth and be nerdful. We'll see you next week.
Bye, Thor's hammer.